Hi, good day to you. Welcome back, viewers, for one more episode of Anew series. And this time we are going to have a three-part series. For the first part is going to be international and national policies. The second part will be defense, infrastructure, and corporate events. And the third part will be innovation and trends. So, starting off with international policies, there has been some welcome developments that's been happening around the country. One of the first events which is of significance is our Foreign Secretary, Mr. Harsh Shrinkla, visited Kathmandu recently. This follows the visits of some high-level visits by the RAW chief and the army chief, which was discussed in the last episode of Anew series. And Nepal and India agreed to complete the remaining segment of boundary work. If you recall that in the recent times there was some disturbance on the boundary, obviously instigated by another neighbor. But I think we are getting back the relationship on track, because Nepal is a very important ally for India along with Bhutan, because these are the only two countries which still allow trade to happen in Indian rupee. The next very important event from an Indian perspective is for another neighbor of India, which is India's outreach to Afghanistan. So India has agreed to construct the Shatut Dam in the Maidan River tributary of Kabul River. Now this would provide drinking water to nearly 2 million residents of Kabul city. And this is once again another activity that India has undertaken, apart from trying to build railways, donating buses, and also trying to link Afghanistan through Chabahar port. This is going to be a very welcome development for the citizens, because it's going to impact the lifestyle and the day-to-day requirements of the citizens. Of course, you will always have a challenge from Pakistan, because they would object, because Kabul River ultimately drains into Indus River. And you already know that because India has been damming a lot of the rivers which are joining Indus, almost the southern part of Pakistan is getting desertified, and a little more of this action, is going to impact Pakistan's economy. So there we are expecting some kind of a headwind from them. The third very important event of significance from India's perspective on international affairs is that UAE has stopped issuing visa to 13 Islamic countries. Now, if you see, most of the Middle East countries, they always were short of manpower, and they always allowed people to come from different countries to come and work in their economy. And there was a marked preference for people from Islamic countries, because they also perceived that they were sharing their wealth with countries of their own religious faith, and then it would also help them to grow their economy, and they would also come at a much cheaper price. But what has been happening is I think UAE has been of late a little spooked with respect to the Islamic terrorist threat that it perceives. And we should also remember that UAE being a monarchy, there is always a worry that whatever happened to the rest of the Middle East sometime a few years earlier could happen over here. And there has been a very marked shift in the diplomacy that is being practiced by UAE. It has already got in close, it has renewed its diplomatic relationship with, or rather started its diplomatic relationship with Israel. And then this, stopping of issuing visas to nearly Afghanistan, Algeria, Iran, Iraq, Kenya, Lebanon, Libya, Pakistan, Somalia, Syria, Tunisia, and Turkey, and Yemen is going to considerably reduce the number of working class people from these countries. Now, this could have a very positive impact for India, because this is the same, the job requirements or vacancies that are coming out because of this can be filled by the people from India. And Indians have always been respected in the Middle East countries for both their hard work and also the knowledge, the technical knowledge that they bring. Now, moving on from the international policies to the national policies, one of the big ticket changes that has happened, or the policy change that has happened, which has gone completely unnoticed, is government has started linking the property registration with National Judicial Data Grid. Now, the objective is to improve India's ranking in the ease of doing business. But this particular, a policy is going to have a lot of impact with respect to considerably reducing the land-related disputes that kind of clog our fast-track courts and the normal civil courts. This will also bring in transparency. I think the next logical step that the country can actually try and implement is to see if there can be an Aadhaar seeding to all the individual property holdings, because that way you can also eliminate binami holdings over a period of time. But in the recent times, we have been seeing that the registration department has gone through a lot of changes with respect to computerization, and both the buyer and seller having to be there and photograph, so that a little bit of denial at a later point of time, and therefore legal disputes relating to that can be reduced. Now this is another step which can considerably reduce the clogging and improve the transparency. The second has been, we also had the RBI coming up with this bi-monthly policy statement, and this time there was a little bit of expectation maybe the RBI will increase the interest rates because the inflation has been slightly rearing its head, but RBI, in spite of having excess liquidity in the system, there has been excess liquidity in the system also because RBI pumped in money, number one. Number two, RBI also went into dollar buying spree, and so whenever dollar is being bought, then equivalent amount of currency is released into the Indian system, and this surplus liquidity is not only keeping the yields low but also has a completely opposite impact with respect to inflation, and the inflation has been higher for some time. But in spite of that, RBI kind of decided to go easy with respect to the interest, and it has kept the interest unchanged. And it has brought two more very significant changes, I think, which is really going to improve the business transaction and the digitization of the commerce. The first change that they have allowed is RTGS, which is real-time gross settlement, has been allowed to be operational from December 14th on 24/7 basis. Now, any transaction, we had three types of online transaction possible. One was IMPS, which is an immediate transfer of funds up to a sum of 20,000, and then the second thing was NEFT, which is National Electronic Fund Transfer, which allowed us to transfer anywhere from 1 rupee to 2 lakh rupees, and then RTGS was used predominantly for high denomination transfers. And this becoming available 24/7 will be of great use, because we are also seeing that economy has changed with respect to working times, and now we have organizations which are predominantly working in the night, or also you have organizations which are kind of synchronized to the customer's timing, either in Europe, US, or Southeast and Eastern countries, the Pacific countries, and therefore this will allow transaction to happen on real-time basis. This is a very welcome development. The second change that RBI has allowed to happen is to the limit for contactless transaction using either a credit card or a e-mandate for recurring transactions through a card or UPI was either allowed only up to a sum of 2,000 rupees. Now that has been increased from rupees 2,000 to 5,000 rupees. So this is expected that a lot of the small transaction at a retail level could happen on a contactless card. Once again, we are using COVID as a opportunity to increase that limits. It will have a little bit of challenges with respect to someone trying to utilize the technology to take money from your card, but it can also come in with certain features which could enable and enhance the possibility of small retail trade up to a sum of 5,000 to completely move on to a digital platform. The next very important policy announcement that has been announced is that the government has come forward to contribute towards the employees' provident fund. So any registration that has been made, or employee registration which has been made from 1st October 2020 to 30th June 2021, and the government has come forward to contribute nearly 2 years contribution. Now they have once again classified it to 2 or 3 categories, where in some categories, depending on the size of the organization, they have said that they will contribute both the employers and the employees contribution, and in some cases they will just contribute the employees contribution. Now this is a very welcome step for small and medium enterprises which are offering new employment opportunities to people. There is a restrictive clause with respect to the fact that the salary of the employees should be less than 15,000, which is the minimum wages announced, and also that the employees either should have been new employees completely coming new into the system, or they should have left between the March 2020 to September 20. So the idea is anyone who lost a job due to the COVID crisis, or anyone coming new into the system, will be provided with a support mechanism by the government. So this should encourage the small and medium enterprises to hire a few people and not worry about having to foot the bill with respect to the retirement benefit component of these employees. As I said earlier, the benefits will depend on the size of the company. The second very subtle and a very important change that has been made, which once again has gone unnoticed, that IT BPO and IT enabled services get a special benefit with respect to removal of registration and compliance requirements for companies to carry out work beyond their registered premises. So we had certain archaic and traditional rules which said that the registered places is where you should actually, employees should come and work. Now in the changed circumstances due to COVID, I think this has been kindly accepted by the government to relax, because there was a lot of representations made by the industry, and government has kindly consented to relax this, and this allows people to permanently work from any location rather than having to come to the office. And then the objective once again is to qualitatively improve the ease of doing business index. So somehow this government has fixated or rather giving a lot of importance to it itself coming up on the ease of doing business index. Whatever be the objective, I think these changes are welcome, because this is going to slowly unshackle the companies from getting stuck in that old systems and archaic rules and regulations, and thereby limiting themselves from the growth possibilities. The next very important development that has taken place, it's slightly retributory in nature, that the GST has nearly cancelled the registrations of almost 1,63,042 GST registrations in October and November. This has been basically initiated due to non-filing of GST or 3B returns for more than 6 months. Now we have been noticing that there has been a lot of circular tradings happening, there have been a lot of fly-by-night operators coming in, and there has been the menace of fake claims with respect to input credit. Now such poor habits can actually derail a very good tax reform. So this deregistration or cancellation of registration to this 1,63,042 people, 42 firms, I think is a step in the right direction. And continuing is another very innovative method that was adopted by the central government with respect to the One Nation, One Ration Card scheme. Now, in the previous episodes of Anew series, we had talked about how far-reaching this reform could be, because any citizen of the country can use his ration card and get himself attached to any ration shop in any part of the country. So far, all these ration cards were completely, regionalized with respect to your state, and therefore the migrant laborers always had a challenge with respect to utilizing the government's benefit when they are going to a different state for working. And more so than ever, this was felt during the COVID crisis, when people were not able to go back to their native, and they were all stuck with some place where they went to work. Now, what the central government had done was, it realized that a lot of the state governments, because of the fall in revenue during the lockdown, they wanted to raise additional cash, and usually the state governments come up with bonds so that they can raise money to meet their recurring expenses. So one of the conditions that the central government had put and were linked was the additional borrowing could be, they could go for an additional borrowing only if they implement the One Nation, One Card scheme. Fortunately, there was not much politics made out of it, and most of these states understood the spirit behind this request, and they adopted the One Nation, One Ration Card scheme, and thereby they were allowed to go for the additional borrowing and meet the requirements. So I wouldn't say this is an arm twisting tactic, but I think these are the kind of efforts I think any policy making government should be looking at, so that we are able to assimilate and integrate to our national identity and pass on the benefits to the citizens. A third is once again a very interesting initiative with respect to saffron cultivation. In earlier series also, we have a new series, we have talked about the saffron cultivation. Now what are we trying to do is that we are seeing that Indian farmers have been kind of very focused with respect to the crops they grow. Now if you look at Punjab or Haryana or southern states, they have been predominantly a paddy or a rice cultivating society, and once again when you go to Maharashtra, it would have been a cane cultivating state. But people have taken very little effort to diversify the crop, number one. And number two, this has also put at risk the concentration risk with respect to the production. Now, government has taken this saffron cultivation. Traditionally, the Pampur region of Kashmir is called as the saffron bowl, and saffron is also grown in Badgam, Srinagar and Kishtwar districts. Now, seeds from the Kashmir of saffron was planted in Sikkim, and it got acclimatized there, and now it is also growing in northeastern states. So this is a very interesting and welcome step, because we are now trying to diversify the crop instead of getting focused in one particular state to many states. The next item is something that we covered the last time in the Anew series also, but I think government has finally come and started doing things which is expected from it with respect to treating everyone equal. Now, the government has come up with policies to give identity cards to transgenders. In the last Anew series, we saw that Assam was the state which allowed transgenders to be as a column apart from male, female. Transgender was another column available for people to tick and use it both for your school admissions and for exams. Now, government has set up a portal simplifying the registration. It is also started a process to build special homes for them. It would equip transgenders to apply for an identity card to the district magistrate or the district collector. I think it's a very important step. It's something very, very humane, and because this was one small community which was always treated with disrespect, and people had to take up a dirty trade to just sustain themselves. Giving an identity to that particular segment of people, I think, has always been a very important constitutional as well as a human requirement from the government and the people. This step by the government, I think, is a very positive step, because this community will also integrate as a citizen of the country. India has always been a country where there have been so many languages, religion and ethnic practices, and the states were also divided based on the language that we speak. And there has always been a requirement and expectation from the states that their language should be practiced, and state governments always have had the vernacular medium of language and instructions going on in their schools. IIT and the education department has come up, education minister has recently announced that IIT and NIT, the National Institute of Technology, which was previously the RECs, will be offering engineering courses in mother tongue. The National Testing Agency, which actually conducts the exams for IIT and NIT, announced that it would conduct the JEE main in 9 regional languages from next year. So Assamese, Bengali, English, Gujarati, Hindi, Kannada, Marathi, Odia, Tamil, Telugu and Urdu, apart from Hindi and English, are the languages available to the students. Very important development. I think people who study in vernacular medium will also have level playing fields now. And with this positive news, we will end this episode of Anew series. Going forward, we are going to the next episode. We are going to talk about defense, infrastructure, and corporate events. Stay tuned, stay healthy, stay happy. We will soon come back to you with the next episode of Anew series. Thank you for being with us. Please click the bell icon and subscribe to our channel and enjoy the continued flow of information. Thank you so much.